Good morning. I am Tejaswini, Assistant Professor in Commerce. So today's lecture is about the subject Indirect Tax 1, 5th semester students, that's for course BCom, affiliated to the University of Mysore. So in Unit 1, so in Indirect Tax 1, Unit 1, the topic is Rationale for Transition to GST. In my earlier class, I already discussed on 2 sessions. So this is the 3rd session. So that is Rationale for Transition to GST. Rationale for Transition to GST. The objective of the study is to understand the issues of previous tax structure, to study the rationale behind transition to GST, and to know the need for GST, and the outcome is the student they analyze the issues relating previous tax structure. So it also helps the students to know the need for the GST, for the introduction of GST in India. It also enables students to understand the rationale behind the transition to the GST. Rationale for transition. Here the government tried numerous tax reforms after liberalization. Indirect tax structure underwent reforms since 1991. Defects in tax structure warranted the replacement of previous inefficient tax system. So here the government tried numerous tax reforms after liberalization. Tax reform initiated in the year 1991. Since then, many changes adopted following the economic crisis. The important recommendations, suggestions were included for the reduction in the tax rates of all major items with respect to the individuals, corporate, income tax, etc. The committee, that is TRC, Tax Recommendation Committee, also recommended a drastic simplification of the laws and procedures, building a proper information system and computerization of tax returns, and for the modernization of the administrative and enforcement machinery, etc. Actually, the defects in tax structure in the earlier indirect tax structure warranted the replacement of the inefficient taxation system. The previous tax structure has the loopholes of tax evasion, cascading effects, multiplicity of taxes, lack of uniformity, and more cost on the tax administration. These major defects in tax system warranted the changes for the replacement of old structure and introducing the new GST structure. What are the flaws of previous tax structure? I told just now the previous tax structure defects. It means the flaws of the previous tax structure. The flaws here is that the first is that no uniformity of tax rates across the states. So this is one of the major defects in the indirect tax structure. That is, there was no uniformity of tax rates, multiple tax rates, and there was multiple taxes and tax rates for various commodities, goods and services were levied in the indirect tax structure, which was very confusion and complex to understand by the taxpayer or by the supplier, and also for the administration of taxation by the tax authorities. So it is one of the flaws of the previous tax structure. And the second flaws is that cascading of taxes, that is due to tax on tax. So here the cascading, it is one of the drawback of the previous indirect tax structure. The cascading actually occurs under the center as well as in the state taxes. Some goods and services actually remains outside the ambit of the CANVAT, that is on the central value added tax, and the exempted sectors were not allowed to claim any credits for any CANVAT or the service paid on inputs. So this cascading of taxes effects that is on tax. It is also one of the major flaws of the previous tax structure. And also the no credit of excise duty and service taxes to the traders were that facilities or benefit was not there in the indirect tax structure in the previous structure, or in the old tax structure, which is one of the major flaws of the previous structure. And also the no credit was there for the state taxes. Any state taxes paid in one state to another, it is also one of the major flaws. And the another flaws is that the multiple tax with different rates and different tax bases. Multiple tax, various taxes are levied on goods and services in pre-GST regime. That is like various multiplicity taxes, means the excise duty, VAT, entry tax, luxury tax, entertainment tax, service tax, octroi. So some taxes, we call it as a multiple taxes or cess. These taxes were levied in addition to the various cess. It has made the tax structure very cumbersome, and also different rates, there was no single rate of taxation. Different rates were levied on various goods and services, which was one of the major drawback of the indirect tax in the earlier system. And also the flaws is that the complexity in the tax, in the indirect taxation. So one of the major issues that in the indirect tax in the earlier tax structure, it is in complexity in determining the nature of transaction, whether it is sale or service, or to make any distinction between the goods and services. That has also made very complex in identifying the goods and services. Further, the complexities in administration, as many of the administrative process involves manual work. So it is also considered as one of the major flaws in the indirect tax or previous tax structure. And the flaws is that one more is that tax inefficiencies. So here tax inefficiency, the inefficiency of any taxes we determined by the extent to which the consumers and producers change their behavior to avoid the tax. So this is one of the deadweight loss. It is caused by the individuals and firms making any inefficient consumptions and production choices in order to avoid the taxes, which creates inefficiencies in taxation. So these are the major flaws in the indirect tax structure. And because of these flaws in previous tax structure, there arises a new concept, new thinking to introduce a GST. Need for GST. Why GST is needed means first and foremost thing is to simplify the tax structure. In earlier tax system, there were multiple taxes levied on various goods and services, and also no single rate was prevailing, which was very confusing and burden for taxpayers. To overcome this problem, GST is introduced. Second thing is the need to control the price. It is eminently possible to institute a comprehensive and effective price monitoring and control mechanism in India that can be brought or achieved effectively by eliminating the cascading effects of commodity taxation, which helps to reduce the price level, and also the changes brought out in the tax structure of the goods and services. This promotes the price monitoring and controlling of the prices under the GST. Third thing is that export promotion. The need for GST is to mainly to export the promotion. Export means taking goods out of India to a place outside India. Laws and procedures for such exports are mainly supervised as per the Customs Act. Here under GST, The export of goods or services is considered at a zero rated supply. GST is not levied on export of any kind of goods and services with the objective to promote the country's goods and services in the world market. Next is to raise the tax revenue or to increase the tax revenue. GST will increase the government revenue mainly in the long run than the short run. So here during the year on year average wise, the GST revenue has been recorded 8%. Comparatively, there was a negative, even though there was a negative growth of 24% in the beginning, but year on year average wise there was a growth record of 8%. So it helps to generate the more tax revenue to the government if there is the introduction of the GST. And lastly, to promote or to improve the complaints level. So these are the factors where the need for GST arises. And for this explanation, I referred the website cbic.go.in and also ici.org, and also the book written by Hemant Singh, All About Goods and Service Tax. Thank you.